This is Joe,
Michelle,
Melissa,
and Shannon
with More Than a Sniff, where we talk about everything dog.
from training to nutrition,
from behavior modification to grooming,
from vet visits to dog parks.
From getting to know us to having guests. Today we are going to take over the next probably 6 weeks and talk about different breed groups, and we'll talk about things that we hear. We've all in some way, shape, or form have worked with the dogs in the groups, not necessarily all of them, but the majority of what's out there. And I think that the non-sporting group can be the most frustrating. They can be the most unique in how we work with them. It's a group that we definitely have to be a little bit more creative with because they weren't really bred to do anything other than look good or something that is not necessarily a good thing. For example, the Chinese Shar Pei and the Chow Chow are both fighting breeds. And so, we're not going to go out and fight these dogs, obviously. So, they are very selfish dogs in general, the breed, the group in and of itself, very self-centered, kind of praising. They can find their own ways to please themselves, and so they don't necessarily need or want people around for what we think that they do. So I'm just going to pull a couple of breeds out and of this group, and we'll talk about them. But as a group, total group, Melissa, what's your thoughts on just the group in and of itself?
variety.
Yeah.
It's one of those that I think a lot of people get them as statement dogs.
Mm-hmm.
And are kind of confused. Like my uncle used to have a lot of Dalmatians.
Yeah.
And he thought they were hunting dogs.
Mm-hmm.
And was always frustrated that they wouldn't hunt for him.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, they're Dalmatians.
Yeah.
But it's just a very unique, a lot of people say they're independent,
Mm-hmm.
kind of, because they're very proud.
Yeah.
I would say it's a proud group.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Michelle, what's your thoughts on them?
it's interesting as I'm like kind of looking over them and thinking about it. It's funny to me because they are all just kind of like this unique, weird bunch of dogs they didn't know what to do with, so they just threw them into this thing.
Yeah.
And yet every single one of them has a purpose behind it somehow.
Yeah.
And I think that's the problem is people are getting them thinking that they're not going to have those crazy herding instincts, or they're not going to have those crazy hunting instincts.
Mm-hmm.
And in all reality, they each do.
Yeah.
And it's harder to figure out. So it's just frustrating for the owner as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I think behaviorally we see more dogs in this group in general, with sometimes you just have to surrender to that's what you have, not picking it apart and getting deeper than what it is. Shannon, what's your thoughts on non-sporting?
I think we see them a lot for behavior issues because there is a disconnection between them having a job and like maybe they were bred for a job that doesn't exist anymore and people don't remember like that's what it was for, or they have a hard time connecting that they still need a job but the instincts don't like match, like transition over to everyday things as easy as other dogs do. And I think that's why we see them behaviorally for behavior problems a lot, because they have still dog instincts and dog energy and dog drives, but it's harder to know what the drives are for individual people that get them in their home. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna just pull out some breeds and have you guys talk about them, of ones that you either have, and I'm gonna talk about the Chow, only because Smokey was with us for 7 years of her life, and she was a client's dog. She was in a kind of a management board and train type situation with us, and so ultimately. And for Smokey, we always understood that she was really kind of all about herself, and we made it all about herself. And she loved it when it was all about Smokey. And when it wasn't about Smokey, just disconnected and did her own thing. And she really wouldn't have the, I'm just not going to do that because it's just not about me. It's about everybody else. And so that was one thing, having her off leash and out. Traveling with her is occasionally she would just head out. There was no purpose to it. It was just she's going to go find her own fun because she really wasn't enjoying what was happening with the rest of the crew. So she was really interesting. Chows in general are not real friendly with people, and she was a big social butterfly, and it was all about her. And we would just tell people that we just never told her she was a chow, so she never learned that she was not supposed to like everybody. So so there was a lot of, just making it about Smokey. She had good obedience. She loved to do tricks, but it took 7 years to get her really on board with it. As long as we made it about her. She loved to be groomed. She loved to be beautiful. She, loved her bows in her hair because people would respond to it. She would love her diamond collar because everybody would respond to it. And walking the streets of New York with her, it was all about her and her looks. And, she just thrived in that environment. So I think that you just have to capitalize on what it is that they thrive in to get them to work for you. Shannon, as we all know from previous podcasts, you have the French Bulldog, and we've all worked with French Bulldogs, but talk a little bit about living with a French Bulldog versus living with your other two as far as just dog in general.
So he has the lowest energy requirement of all the dogs. He's perfectly happy to be a couch potato, but his personality is most, he'll do that when that suits him. Yeah. Where the other dogs are more willing to please you and make you happy and do what you want them to do. He wants you to make him happy and do what he wants you to do. And he'll oblige you if it's the right time of day, if it's the right temperature, if you have the right treat, So he is he's very happy and pleasant. He does have I'll do it when I want, brings a very hard, stubborn, angry side. Yeah. So when you want him to do something and it doesn't suit him, that's when you get the major pushback. Yeah. And the bad behavior comes out.
Yeah. Yeah. So Melissa, you grew up with Shar-Peis.
Yep.
Which I find that really fascinating. Uh-huh. So talk a little bit about growing up with them.
So it was really funny. I had Shar-Peis probably the first 6 years of my life, and then we switched to labs. So it was like, hard turn. Yeah. But I loved them growing up. And it was kind of we had 3 of them, 2 males and a female, which is also a very kind of trouble combination.
Yep.
But it worked. There was one, we used to call him Mr. Grumpy, but he was just kind of a jerk. And he would kind of go off and do his own thing. He would sit on the rocks, watch the neighbor's yard, whatever. But I was little. I would grab their wrinkles. I would hold on to them and ride their backs. And now if I heard a client say they did that with their Shar-Peis, I'd be like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
But they were very much, from what I remember, like if I was crying, they would get annoyed and they would leave. Like they did not, if I was crying, they were like, no, okay, we're done. Yeah. And they would just walk off and they would come to come get me. And that's when they would start barking. They did not want me to cry. Like that was, but most of the time so when I was younger, if I was an hour, I would turn into a little brat. Yeah. So my mom would just put me outside. Even from a baby, I'd be in like the bed. Yeah. And I'd be hanging from the tree. That sounds like a really weird, if you don't see the visual, but when the kid can put their legs on the ground. Yep. Those and little all bouncy the dogs things would lay around me. And they would just quote unquote guard me all day. Yeah. But yeah, I have a really fond place for them just from my childhood. Yep. Memories of those 3. Sure. They did have aggression problems, which when I was younger, I was shielded from it. Sure. But now that I'm older, I talk to my parents about that. Yeah. And they'd be like, oh yeah, Ginger killed our neighbor's dog. And I was like, what? Yeah. And she got out and she had to put down. They told me that she went to a farm. Right. She did not go to a farm. Yep. But they were definitely a peculiar group. Yeah. Little raisin faces. Right.
Yeah. Michelle, you have been working with a Boston Terrier for quite a long time. Yep. The initial goal was service dog. Yep. And talk a little bit about training him. And
he is a stubborn, hard dog. Yeah. He is independent for sure. He he loves everybody and everything, but it is on his terms, and when it's about him, for sure, everything is about him.
Yeah,
just like with Smokey.
Yeah,
and it works for his mom. Like that's really kind of what she needs. But I think the hardest part about the Boston is that they're not grouped in with terriers, but they're still a terrier.
Right.
So I think people start treating them different because they're not in that group.
Yeah.
And yet they still have those territorial instincts. He's pushy. He will get in your face gladly. And bop you in the face, and it hurts. And he's not being aggressive; it's just who he is. But he's a tough little dog for sure.
Yeah, I think Melissa, you just took on your first lesson with a Tibetan Terrier, and talk a little bit about that lesson.
So fun. He was, because if it was all about him, the praise, he loved that level of praise. But like if you gave him too much praise, he'd walk away. Yeah, he's like no, and so in any pressure you gave him, disconnected. Yep. So it was always very light, very positive, very very small steps. He did the behavior kind like we rewarded it. Yeah, yeah. But he definitely told you when he was done. Yep. He walked away, laid down. Yeah. And we're like, okay, he's. And it was also super funny, that lesson towards the end. This group came as a van, and they pulled out all these cages with ferrets and a hedgehog and a chinchilla, and a lady had a parrot. Like, I don't know what this group was. They were all wearing matching outfits, but no logo. Huh. Yeah, it was weird. But he put up, and he just, like, stared at him. Yeah. And then he came and kind of did a little trot around. And then he would just lay down and calm, just looked at him, and didn't bark, hackles weren't up, but he had a very puffed up. Mm-hmm. So we brought him back, and that tail was high, and he worked good after that. Huh. And it was just a weird, he worked more proud, where before it was happy. I don't know. It was just fascinating to see in a puppy. Huh.
Interesting. Michelle, have you found that with the Boston too?
Absolutely. Yeah. He definitely, if you give him something that he can be proud about, it's kind of funny to watch him, because you see his little chest puff up. And it's hilarious.
Totally into it. And then, I think in general, if you can understand that and not get frustrated with it and capitalize on those moments, Shannon, like you have with Louie, that you know when his best working time is, you know what the best temperature is, from living, and that's kind of how how it was with Smokey as well, living. It's pretty empowering to be able to do that with those dogs. And I think that, pit bulls are in the category as well, as far as the non-sporting. And I think people forget that, that they're really just all about them. And I think that, the Shar-Peis and the bred for fighting so long ago, they kind of had to be about themselves to survive, and because you're not fighting for somebody else, you just don't, like, you can't even comprehend that. And so I think understanding that piece and not overdoing it with that group of dogs, and taking it slow and making it about them, and really changes the way that you train and the way that you do things. That every training program needs to be modified in some way, shape, or form for the more selfish dogs, and that one size does not fit all at all. You have to be willing to give and take. You have to be willing to change. Shannon, I would imagine that you've done quite a bit of different training styles with Louie, to get him where he is at this point. So will you talk a little bit about that?
I think that's a difficult thing with dog training, because for the general public, because they think that you should just learn one way. And I think that has a lot to do with media and books and things that are out, because a lot of people that write a book have their way, and it's just kind of like one way, where we know all different kinds of ways and look at the dog and everything as a whole and modify it. And so it's really challenging when you're training your own dog to see where you have to change. Like, it's a learning process for yourself. You know what I mean? And I'm always changing. And so most recently, I am teaching Louie all of the same commands and everything as all the herding dogs. And we've changed a lot, and I've talked to you about it a lot. You know, I'll call and say, what do you think about if I do this instead? You know, because I like to get feedback, but I think about it all the time. Why is this not working? What should I do to change? And how do I think he'll respond to it? And why would one way be better than another? So, I mean, for herding, we've used pressure, we've used food. Now we're using targeting, you know, and all of those methods are all extremely different, but he requires combinations of different methods to get the result. And that has to do with the way that he thinks, the way that he responds to you. If something's going to make him mad because you push him too hard, that's the main thing with him, is if he has a perception that you want him to do it and you are pressuring him and you're the bulldog, you know, that's when he's like, I'm the bulldog, and then the bulldog comes out. So I try to make it more neutral or more fun or more like a game, because it doesn't bring that, no, I'm doing what I want, kind of energy out of the equation. But it is really challenging to work with a dog that has a definite, like, you push them too far kind of a thing. Because most dogs, you put, like, if my other dogs, if I push them too far, they're like, oh, I'm not really interested in this anymore. And you're like, oh, no, mistake. Come on, do it one more time. And they're like, okay, one more time. And then you can stop, right? But with him, he's like, no, I'm done. And then he'll just, like, squat down into this angry ball of not moving. And you're like, just move a little, you know? So it's really, really interesting. It's really, really challenging. I think that's why I like him. He is the hardest. And so for me, the victory is really great. Yeah. Like when I can get him to do something like that's been such a challenge, then I'm like, hooray, amazing. And then when you get to that point, then he's like, oh yeah, this is amazing, and it's all about me again. And you can start over and move to something new. But it's a very roller coaster kind of thing to get over, because you have these anger and happy or reward kind of pattern to training. Which is difficult, because it's really easy to get frustrated because when you're in that, no, I hate you, no, I'm not doing what you want me to, it's really, really frustrating to push them out of that to get to the reward. And I think also that's why other people have challenges with this, because they don't know that they don't know they have to keep pushing through the ugly part to get to the pretty. They just are like, no, that's not what I wanted, I better stop. And you have to know when's the time to stop and when's the time to push through the ugly. And that ugly can be really bad, but you have to keep going until you get to the other side of the hill.
Michelle, what would you add to this whole conversation of the non-sporting?
The more I just keep like looking over those breeds and stuff like that are on this list. And I actually grew up with a Dalmatian mix when I was growing up, and he was mixed with a pointer, and he was treated like a pointer. My parents had labs and pointers and stuff like that, so he, and my dad to this day will say he's his best hunting dog he ever had. But I think back about that, and he had such a weird aggressive side to him that now that I think about it, it's totally Dalmatian.
Yeah.
And he would go for hours like a Dalmatian would, like forever and ever and ever. And I think that's why my dad liked him so much for a hunting dog.
Right.
But as I'm looking over this list of them and stuff, I just keep thinking, like, these are not that they can't make good family dogs, because I think they can.
Yeah.
But a lot of them are one-person dogs.
Yep.
The Dalmatian was 100% my brother's dog. Like, the Dalmatian pointer mix. Like, he loved the rest of us. He was a great family dog.
Sure.
Like, but if anybody, like, he was always fine with other people. But if somebody else came in and touched him the wrong way, he would go full on go after them.
Yeah.
He wouldn't do that with me, but he definitely did not like me like he liked my brother or even my parents. But it just, all of them, I keep looking at them and I'm like, they really are. I think it's because they have that like independent streak in them. Mm-hmm. They really just pick one person to bond with. Yeah. Even if they like everybody else, it really is, they love one person. Yeah. And that's, I think it's really important if you have kids to take into consideration, if your kids want to bond with a dog, that might not happen with this group.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've got a client that just got a Frenchie, and she just loves that it's her dog, because the other dogs are everybody else's, and And that little Frenchie is her dog, you know, and I think that when you're looking for that or need that in your life, I think it's a direction to consider for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, we've talked about this on the podcast before. I personally love it that my dogs love only me. Like the one dog that only loves me, like I love that about him.
Yep.
But if you have kids, it's just some of that time, like if you want a real like good family, like overall family dog, it's something to consider.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Melissa?
I think with this group, I don't know how to phrase it exactly, but when you have a dog in the non-sporting group, put aside your preconceived notions and take the dog for who they are.
Yeah.
And then put a training plan to that. Put things around that. Of course, still train them to your life as much as you can. Like, I'm not saying, like, let them run free.
Yeah, yeah.
But you're only going to have a battle if you try to get this dog to be anything but themselves.
Right.
Because they want to please them.
Yeah.
Not to mean that they don't want to please you sometimes, too.
Yeah.
But it all comes down to them. And also, just with this group, looks can be deceiving. I had a consultation with somebody who has, they have 2 bulldogs, English bulldogs. And she said, I want them just to be cute and cuddly.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, they're not bred to be cute and cuddly.
Right. Yep. Yep.
But to kind of, yes, they look unique. Yes, they're all different and they're fun. But look at who they are.
Yep.
And be honest with yourself in that way.
Sure.
Because then you can have a lot of fun with them.
Right.
Once you put down those barriers.
Yeah. I think, even Smokey, when she would head out, it wasn't that she had a great recall. I feel like she was my dog. Overall, like, I'm the one that she loved the most. And so I would just have to tell her, fine, I'm just going to leave you then. Well, she didn't want to be left. And so then, oh, yes, I'm coming. Here I come. Woo, and so her recall was like, it was all right. She could be off leash because she just, she hung around us. But if it was like, Smokey, come, she's like, I'm sniffing this. Be there in a minute.
I'm busy. I have something to do.
Yeah. So I think it's, for sure, just treat them as who they are and understand what it is. Yes, you can get a recall on them. Yes, you can get all the behaviors, but it's important to know pushing through the hard times, accepting some things, as long as it's not aggression and biting and running away from you. Yeah. We accepted Smokey to be, she's on her sniffing spree, and it was all right. She never left. She never ran away. It was just accepting that she's got to meet those things in her head so that she's satisfied as well. So I think that it's definitely a breed to talk to trainers about, and making sure you get the right personality within this group and breed, so that you have the best chance and they have the best chance of an amazing good home.